Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. So this is part of a series that we're calling You Are the Union. And the first thing I want to do is introduce the faces on your screen. My name is Amir Talai. I am a SAG-AFTRA local board member in Los Angeles. Rick Deskin is the SAG-AFTRA Seattle president. And Ilyssa Fradin is a national board member out of Chicago. So this is something that a lot of us have been wanting to do going back at least a few years, which is to get elected leaders in the room with other members to sort of bridge the gap a little bit. There's this feeling that there's the union and then there's members. And it's really important to remember that you are the union, right? The union is not a corporation like Disney or Walmart, right? It's us. It's you and me. Right? And if you want to change things at the union, you have the power to do that, right? Whether it's voting, whether it's volunteering at the union, giving feedback to staff and leaders like the people on this Zoom, or, just getting more informed and, like coming to meetings, whatever, and then advocating for your fellow members out in the world. So today, our sort of focus is issues concerning performers outside of LA and New York. As you should know, there are a lot of jobs happening outside of LA and New York, and there are a lot of SAG-AFTRA members outside of LA and New York. So we wanted to bring as many of you here as possible to know that Rick and Ilyssa and I are here to listen, to answer questions that you might have. But I want to be clear about something. Rick and Ilyssa and I are not here in any official capacity, all right? Once our union has more money flowing in like before, I would love to have this go through official channels, but for now, there really isn't the resources to do it, right? So for now, it's just us doing it. We've been elected to various positions, yes, but we don't have the authority to speak on behalf of the union, right? We're here as ourselves. So we might not always have the answers to your questions, but if we don't, we'll help you look for the answers. We might not always have the ability to act on any ideas that you have, but I can tell you that hearing your feedback is what makes us better leaders, better able to represent you. And I do know that there's other elected leaders on this Zoom watching and listening. And so they can hear your thoughts as well. And then the good news, since we're not here in any official capacity, we can actually be a little more candid about our opinions, hopefully, notwithstanding any sort of confidential matters that we can't comment. So here's how it's going to work. I just want to set like a little rough agenda so you know what to expect. If you have a question that you want to ask us or a comment about something you want to see changed or implemented, put that in the chat box either on Zoom or YouTube. And then our friend Jen Levin, who's a SAG-AFTRA delegate out of LA, she'll get them to me to read. If you want to ask your question on video, let Jen know in the chat, and then you just have to be on Zoom with us. And if you're watching on YouTube, the Zoom link is in the description. And feel free to ask us anything, right? It can be directly union related, but I don't know, maybe it doesn't have to be, right? If there's something sort of tangentially related, ask us, right? We're members just like you. So maybe there's something that you want to ask us that's not exactly union related. And then finally, I just want to let everyone know that we're recording this and posting it later. So if you don't want your question asked publicly, just let Jen know that you want it to be anonymous, and I'll just read it anonymously. Okay. And then also, I'm on Instagram if anyone wants to DM me there. We got a question earlier today that I wanted to read. So we'll jump into that. But in the meantime, fill up the chat box, folks. Kevin Murray said that he worked as a SAG-AFTRA performer in New York and LA for about 20 years. And then he moved to Chicago, and he learned that SAG-AFTRA performers in Chicago don't always have the same terms as people in LA and New York, particularly with respect to background. So I wanted to ask, that's not something I was aware of. I'm going to be honest, guys. I'm pretty ignorant about stuff outside of LA and New York. That's why Ilyssa and Rick are here. But I'm really just here to sort of moderate and facilitate. But so Ilyssa, coming from Chicago, can you speak to that? Is that the case? First of all, that performers in Chicago don't always have the same contract terms as people in LA and New York?
So, hi, Kevin, if you're here. We sat in pre-COVID, a background committee meeting together, actually, and talked about a little bit about different things that happen. So we have 25 locals. Bet you didn't know that. No, 25 locals, and all of the locals have a zone for commercial background. So with the radius of whatever that local's zone is, they have covered background. So the terms for background are exactly the same nationally across the board. Commercials. But in locals, where which are in other states and some in the same states, locals that do not have zones for TV theatrical, that is where it differs. So it's not that it hasn't been organized. And so we call it non-jurisdictional. So what he experienced was SAG-AFTRA performers, say in the Chicago local, working non-jurisdictional background on a covered set. And covered means it's covered by the contract. And that's
so let me make sure I understand. So if you're in Chicago, we haven't been able to sort of organize to get the same number of background roles on a TV set than in like LA and New York. Is that what it is?
This is super complex, and it's
okay.
super detailed, and we could talk just about this and have other people chime in on it. The way that it's expressed, and I don't know if this is expressed in Seattle this way, but it's just not covered work. And it's not one of the 7 zones. You have your West Coast zones and your East Coast zones, and you have 7 of them. And of those zones go back to when Screen Extras Guild was absorbed into Screen Actors Guild. So those terms, whatever those terms were, I wasn't a member in 92, believe it or not, whatever those terms and those negotiations with SEG and SAG, those have solidified the zones and they have moved forward. Now, the organizing of that work, and which is kind of something that I think is the whole purpose of a union, is to not only protect the member at large through the collectively bargained agreements, and Lord knows we have hundreds of them in different categories of work, is to organize new work and to organize members. So I feel that we've tried different mechanisms in which to organize, but it's not always as easy as, hey, let's organize those. This is a codified term. It's a category of work, and it's something that has to happen at the bargaining table. And we could go chapter and verse into that type of thing, but it's not going to solve that problem today. And I know in my local, what I try to do in the Chicago local, and I'm sure other locals do this as well, in the organizing vein, is try to find ways where the worker is empowered and educated and can stand up for what's right. Some of the things that have been happening in organizing are finding the markets or the locals where there's so much active work now. Chicago didn't have the tax credit that we had today, that in 92, but now that we have it and we have more work, what can we do? Can we start with working conditions? Can we start with local terms? How can we protect that worker in this job and take it the next step? So it's really the beginning grounds of organizing are happening for that category of work, or just organizing the worker.
Okay.
So you move out of LA or New York or San Francisco, the Strip, Hawaii, Washington Mid-Atlantic area is part of New England, is part of that New York East Coast zone, and you come to Chicago, TV theatrical is not covered. It's non-jurisdictional work for background.
Okay. And is there anything that performers in LA and New York can do to sort of create, to sort of help members in Chicago sort of get their work covered?
I think I saw Ron Ostro on here, not to call out names, but I think that as the national chair of the commercials committee,
The background committee.
our background committee, thank you. You know, whatever the work that comes back. So typically I would think that that committee really focused on TV theatrical background issues. And what we did in Chicago was put actually a person who does background work, a member who does commercial background, to be on there and to learn and then come back and try to give us some ideas and some help. It's a massive lift. It's a huge lift. So what could LA and New York do is stay in your damn locals and work your own damn jobs and stop trying to take, no, I'm kidding. But it's part of like trying to understand, be respectful. I know people leave locals, they go and they chase that work.
Mm-hmm.
Even I've heard of stories, and I don't mean to monopolize this, Rick, but I've heard of stories
Quite all right.
where commercials, which are covered, the casting, they'll get on set and they'll be like, this person's from LA or New York. They flew or drove and did background work on commercials on a 3-day shoot. And you're like, wait a minute. This is like the one job we had this month that was a union commercial. That's what it's like out here. So maybe, yeah, stay in your own zone. But we're just like, when you turn around and you find somebody going, because we're a national union, you can work anywhere. Just don't undercut the terms. Yeah. Traveling without a travel fee or pay of work or trying to work as local hire is totally what undercuts our contract and hurts the locals outside of New York and LA. And I'm sure there's things to do that hurt other people. I just
right. I actually, if you guys don't mind, I see that Ron Ostro has his hand raised, so I'm gonna let him speak to this since he's sort of our resident expert. Say that again.
I called him out on the carpet.
Ron,
that was very sweet.
Lying comfortably in your bed. I love this. Hi, welcome.
Because my internet seems to not work well anywhere but in here.
Thank you so much for being here and speaking on this. I really appreciate you.
Wanted to hear what was going on.
Yeah.
So just one thing to respond to the person's question and just to put a little different nuance onto what Ilyssa was talking about. When she talks about non-jurisdictional, what the rule allows is in these places, union members are allowed to work on these projects, but they will not be given the benefit of the union protections. So it's very confusing because we have something called Global Rule 1, which says you're not supposed to work non-union. But in these places where we're outside of the zone, a union person could work background on these productions and be treated as a non-union performer. They're not going to be subject to any kind of discipline. They're not prevented from doing this because it's what the term we're using is non-jurisdictional. Because we don't have coverage there, they're not prevented from doing it.
Can I ask a question? I just want to drill down for a moment, if I may, on what non-jurisdictional means. In a way, and maybe this is a weird sort of metaphor, but is it sort of like a job which is sort of not considered, like if you were, I'm trying to think of the most random thing, like house painting, right? Like a union actor could work as a house painter because that's not something that's covered by the union.
A better metaphor would be print.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the fact is the union would take a very strong position about this. Background work is something our union covers. House painting is not something our union covers. Print work is something an actor might likely do, but is not something that our union covers. So there's a difference between something that we don't claim is something that our performers, that our union should cover, and another one is that we have determined that under certain circumstances, we don't have jurisdiction, we don't rule over people who do this in certain places. We have jurisdiction over background in the 7 zones. We have jurisdiction over background nationally, in essence nationally, for commercials. under our AFTRA contracts, we have certain AFTRA contracts that are even more expansive than the commercial contract, where it literally is national. Anywhere, even though the fact is that they're placed in the country where there is absolutely no production whatsoever. If somebody dropped out of the sky and decided they wanted to produce something over there under an AFTRA contract, we would have coverage. So jurisdiction literally means, you know, if you looked it up in the dictionary, you know, we have the rule over. But yeah, if you wanted to say house painting, yeah, SAG never doesn't cover any house painters. But like I said, it's a little, it would be more like akin to print.
Okay.
And if can I just also say, to your point, where they're not covered under the contract, so it's a covered set, it's a union set, and they're not getting the terms or the benefits of that agreement. That's why organizing in the sense of getting people empowered to understand from the very beginning is something that we've been trying to do in locals outside of LA and New York, is to say, okay, you know, get beyond the state rights, get what marries maybe the union contract, and see what we can do and work locally. So people are used to not, oh, you're non-union, but you are a working performer, you're an actor, you're a professional performer, which also has a different terminology in some of our contracts. And I will also say, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't actually think we have legacy after contracts. TV theatrical, for example, in Chicago Fire is still under an AFTRA agreement because it licensed and started producing during merger. So it didn't get everything else after merger. The whole point was to make them SAG-AFTRA contracts. So something like the Nickelodeon contract or something like that was a legacy AFTRA contract. Whatever those terms are have moved forward. So if Nickelodeon dropped down in the middle of North Dakota, it would be a union show, even though it's outside of any zone.
We have the TV theatrical contract, which is what most of all the work is done. And after a legacy, to Ilyssa's point, after legacy has a lot of one-off contracts, not just the ones that we are most familiar with. There are a lot of contracts. And under most of these contracts, under the legacy AFTRA, there was a much more expansive amount of coverage for background. We have changed over the time. Some of this has changed. For instance, when we renegotiated the TV theatrical, which had the CW supplement, in exchange for getting higher rates in the CW supplement, we gave up national coverage. But there are other ones that don't. So it's all different. But in terms of the majority, what most people think of is for TV is the TV theatrical contract. And that is the one where we do not have the coverage outside of the zones. I want to talk about one other thing, which is your question, Amir, about what people can do. And actually, Ilyssa raised something that's a little bit off of the subject, which is people leaving their home to go take work somewhere else. That is an issue of maybe being fairness to people, in particular locals, to be able to work. But the issue in terms of what we can do in Los Angeles or New York to help our brothers and sisters around the country who may want to have benefit of union terms and protections is very much this discussion, and a discussion with not just your, it starts with your local leadership, but also goes to your national leadership, to talk about whether or not you feel that it is important to organize, whether or not it's important. We've had a discussion. I hope that this isn't an inappropriate thing to say, but we've had discussions about attitudes in particular locals. What would happen if all of a sudden the set was a union set, and people who were used to being able to work non-union, non-jurisdictional rather, all of a sudden that avenue was not available to them? How would our members feel about, yes, the 20 to 50, depending on the contract, people got to work under covered work, whereas all these other people who used to be able to get work on that show now can't. They were happy to get the non-union work because it was money, even though they weren't getting the benefits. So we have to have a discussion in the locals that says we are ready to make the commitment that for the good of other people to get higher wages, to get their pension and health credits, to support the union through contributions that would flow from it, we are willing to give up the chance to work non-jurisdictional. This is a very big discussion. From New York and Los Angeles, all that we can do, is try to encourage people to recognize that there is a benefit not only to them, but to the union to do this. And that once we can establish a quasi-national coverage, then we have the ability to actually make improvements that might include expanding work opportunities. So it's...
What's interesting though about your point is that it was just brought up to me actually. So everything about the mids and smalls is post-merger. And a lot of this happened prior to merger, anything like with background coverage. And so we've inherited this issue and it moves forward. And as the locals outside of LA and New York develop, we're all so unique in our cultures and what we do, not just the state, but the entire local and what we do with their category of work. I don't think it's to say we want to be a national union, you want national coverage, you want national support, but it's not missed on me that Chicago is a union secure state where my brothers and sisters in, Nashville, which has recording artists as their main category of work, and Chicago doesn't. We barely have one member, I think, that even recognizes themselves as that category of a recording artist singer. They're a right to work state. They have a whole other host of issues. And so we have this one issue that you led with, Amir, about background because of Kevin's question of moving to our market. Members are now getting a chance with this growth of technology and production and tax incentives to expand and move out of the local that once might have had that work that was all within its jurisdiction. So it's far more complex than just a member or a committee or leaders on whatever level fighting for something. It's the culture of that local. And sometimes that local has autonomy. They don't want anybody to come into their local. They're happy the way things are. And other people are like, no, we're going to change your culture for the betterment of. And maybe it's not the betterment of. We will constantly be going back and forth about what sways the divisiveness within the local itself. We try, at least I try, and I'd love for Rick to talk, sorry. I try
Actually,
to...
I want to move on to our next question if we can.
Yeah.
But I appreciate, Ron, thank you for coming on, buddy. Good to see you. And thanks for stopping in. Let me see. Thank you for. I know this is that's a really complicated issue, and like Ron and Ilyssa said, it's a conversation that is pretty expansive. So it's not even something we could handle in the 90 minutes that we have here. I'm happy that we were able to touch on it a little, and thank you for your question, Brian. But I want to keep moving forward.
Kevin, it was Kevin's question.
Kevin's question, excuse me. Thank you. Okay, so anonymous question here, and why don't we start with Rick since he hasn't had a chance to chime in yet. What are some advantages and disadvantages to working in a mid or small local as opposed to LA and New York?
Well, for me, the advantage is that you're dealing with a market that is kind of like the Wild West, the frontier. So it's a lot of organizing possibilities. The disadvantage, of course, is that because of Washington State's small tax incentives, we only have a certain amount of work that comes into the state. So I've got a lot of members that aren't able to work like you could in Chicago or Atlanta or LA or New York. But there is work. We've got commercial work, corporate educational work, new media work, lots of independent film work. But you know, that's basically the advantage and disadvantage of at least my market. And I've got a 4-state jurisdiction, and in my 4 states, I've got 1 TV series and 1 Adult Swim mini TV series. So that's all in a 4-state jurisdiction as far as that contract goes. But we've got commercials. Again, we've got other kinds of work that happen, and we've got lots of actor performers that book that work. But the main disadvantage, at least in my market, is that hardly any actor can solely exist off of their acting work. They've got to have a secondary line of work or an actor day job to make ends meet.
Yeah, that was the case for me when I was coming up in San Francisco as well. Let me ask you, Ilyssa. You know, I've heard a lot of people say, I'm leaving LA and moving to, you know, Atlanta or New Orleans because I feel like I will be a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Chicago is still a pretty large pond. So do you think that, what do you think of that in those terms?
Of somebody moving in or being?
Yeah. Is there an advantage to do you think, or to leaving one of the big cities and going to Chicago? Do you think they would have an easier time finding work, or would it be harder? Or
Okay, so in non-COVID times,
right, in the before times.
in the before times, so Chicago started having we started our tax incentive, or a tax credit really, which is again what makes each local very unique, because the tax credits, tax incentives, tax rebates, whatever they are, have terms that either benefit producers or don't. And ours is, for example, very good public policy. You must be a resident in Illinois. There's no above the line, all of this stuff that keeps it. You have to have the LLC here. You literally have to move your production hub here. And that grows jobs here. And we've been successful since 2000, when we started the credit program, and have basically are looking to remove a sunset on ours. Some of these sunset, if it's a short term, you're never going to get a series. If it's a long term, you're going to get series that come. But because we don't have above the line, we don't have a lot of film here, a lot of big budget film, but not that there's a lot of feature film per se anyhow. Coming here with a really substantial resume and putting it in front of the producers for like Mark Tinker and the Chicago Fire shows, he's going to notice that and they're going to cast you. I mean, I remember when things started to explode, they were like, hey, all you Chicago actors, you need to have a real IMDb page, because they actually go, the producers actually go and look at IMDb to see what your resume is. And so there we were, all like going to the SAG-AFTRA discount page, getting that discount on the IMDb Pro, because we were like, oh, we never had to have that before. So yeah, if you come into a market like Chicago for work and you have a really substantial resume, yeah, you're gonna get probably an agent faster. We have anywhere from like 20 to 30 franchised agents in our local, and our local is 4 states as well. And people come in from other locals that we service. So that's a whole other layer to what our locals do. Seattle, Rick can talk to what the other states that you service, but like our staff doesn't just deal with the members in our 4 locals. Our staff also does Twin Cities local, does Detroit's local, Michigan, does Ohio, Pittsburgh, when it comes to some of the contracts. So coming in, yeah, you're a big fish in our market if you have the resume. And because of the amount of work, you're a new face. Whereas if I go to LA or New York, there's so many people. I'll be a new face for somebody, but for the most part, there's a new face every day popping up. Somebody once said to me, the reason why they cast in Chicago is there's one Ilyssa Fradin. I go to LA and I got 6 or 8. I was like, oh, I'll stay here.
Great. Okay. Another anonymous question. Are you finding more opportunities to take advantage of union services right now, with everything union being virtual? I'm not
I
sure.
would say,
Go ahead, please.
well, I'll speak for myself. I've never done as many Zooms as I've been doing in the past 4 months. But aside from that, you know, our union's services are reduced, but we make up for it with the amount of Zoom activity that we're doing on various subjects with the President's Task Force on Education and Outreach programming and SAG-AFTRA Foundation programming. There's a whole wealth of information that's available to us. And I've actually leveled up, partially thanks to Ilyssa, with the voiceover sessions and workshops that we've done. I've managed to level up my equipment, and you know, I'm just looking forward to tackling the next voiceover audition because now I know that much more. So I would say, I mean, I wouldn't say it's evened out, but it's kind of evened out for me in Washington.
Yeah.
I think the thing about services like that, and Rick's right. I mean, anybody who is looking for anything to do, my God, there's so many things. I was like averaging one a day, it seemed like, you know, like, oh, well, that's an interesting thing. And the SAG-AFTRA Foundation was always doing them. It's just we were so busy with our day-to-day and now we're stuck inside, right? Or stuck in front of a screen. So you can level up that way and take advantage. But I find what a lot of members, new and existing, they don't know to do an account on the SAG-AFTRA website and then look at the deals and discounts. Like now that we're all doing EcoCast, and I'm not branding and I'm not promoting, but if we're all going to be self-taping at home, wouldn't it be great to know how to do that? Oh, yeah, there's a 20% discount on Actors Access. Yeah, brought to you by your union because you're a member in good standing. I know that there are people that know that, but I have members who are like, what's Actors Access? Because we just never used it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think there are great services still advantaged if you look for them online, like on YouTube, SAG-AFTRA TV or SAG-AFTRA Foundation, and you just go online, get the app. You constantly are going, oh, I didn't realize you had all of that.
Yeah.
And Chicago has its own little special resource center, so we started that too.
A lot of people ask me, like, how can I get more involved as a union member? What can I do to like be a better union member? And literally the simplest thing I tell them is read your emails. Read your emails from the union.
Big time.
Because and this is a problem sort of industry wide, but our email open rate is terrible. But there's so much information in these emails, and just that alone can really sort of level you up and get you sort of smarter about what's going on with the union, what it can offer you, you know, what different sort of classes or volunteer opportunities, stuff like that. I know that this week the union's been asking people to write and call our Congress people to get, I don't remember the number of the bill, but
yeah, it might be the based on the HEROES Act or
yeah. Because I know that we've done some really important work trying to get benefits for people who are mixed earners, people who do both, 1099s and W-2s to get sort of full unemployment. I wish I had the information right now, but check your email. It's in there, folks. Great.
And it's also right on our webpage, just at the top of the SAG-AFTRA.org webpage. Click on news and it's right there.
That's what I was going to say. And I'm on there right now. That's why I think the website, like, you know, people can say, oh, it's not very user friendly, or I don't like the colors, I don't like whatever. But honestly, when you start clicking around, and this is something that I say in every one of my new member orientations that I do, is if you're not setting up an account and getting like, I don't know, direct deposit, all the other things, and make sure your agent is listed correctly, and just do everything that profile allows. And then you can see, oh, well, I have that.
Actor.
Yeah, you get all of that. But people I don't know what they think. I don't know.
We got to do better. We all got to do better. Okay. Chuck Slavin wants to know, you both mentioned tax credits. New England also has tax credits. And I know that the union has been helpful with tax credits. The various locals are often pushing for tax credits where they are. Do either of you know, I don't know the answer to this question, do either of you know if the union is doing any work on the national level for a countrywide federal film tax credit?
Federal film, yeah. It's something that I'm always speaking to my representatives and my senators about. I'm positive that the GAP committee is probably working on this and has been, talking to the various representatives and senators on Capitol Hill.
Real quick, the GAP committee is the Government Affairs and Public Policy Committee, which there's a national GAP. There are also various local GAP committees. I'm sorry, please go on. I just wanted to fill that.
Yeah, well, I'm talking about the national GAP. And sorry about that acronym. I'm so used to acronyms. I know that we've got a great committee that's on that on the GAP, is the GAP committee, and we've got great staff liaisons that are constantly talking to the legislators that can impact this. But then also as an individual, I always talk to my senators and my representative. If they run into someone that is representing SAG-AFTRA, they'll say, hey, yeah, I heard about this from Rick Deskin, blah, blah, blah. So that's why it's so important to be engaged with them and you're not being a nuisance. They want to hear from constituents. And if you have the opportunity to visit Washington, D.C., go try to visit your legislators on Capitol Hill. It's possible to do.
Well, not right now. But
not right now. yeah,
but yes,
exactly.
Send them emails. I imagine that if we can get closer to that, if we can get something like that proposed in Congress, that's something that our union would ask us to email our reps about. But yeah, that would be great.
So I will say, I just was on the site, and so Massachusetts just on the 27th, and today being the 29th, was having their members got an alert from SAG-AFTRA Communications to their members locally to flood their Congress about, making sure that the Massachusetts, the mass film incentive. And I was actually talking to the MIDS VP, Michelle, proud about this, about how important it is now that we're having a reduced staff, right? Because of COVID, we've been taking those prudent steps to not be like any other, unlike any other industry, and helping our staff by saying, okay, I'm going to get this message out. The union put out this message, communications put this out. Now it's my turn as a member and as a leader, both, to make sure those members are going out. So hopefully in Massachusetts, Chuck, everybody flooded their state reps and got that, that passed. I don't know what the turnout of that is, but on a national level, I agree. The GAP committee, and if you have a local GAP committee, in the governance structure of things as leaders, your local board can pass a motion, and that motion would then go to the appropriate national committee, whether it's the GAP committee or the governance review committee. And then ultimately after debate and seeing if it's something that's doable, such as possibly a federal tax incentive, which would be really unusual given, how varied, all these states, everybody's different. Everybody wants something different. The culture of the state is very, very different. Right to work versus union secure, above the line versus below the line. It's just, to get one thing like Canada just seems really like a big battle that we'd have to get behind. I think that's something that if each local wrote to a motion and passed it, maybe it would have legs.
Is it something that we would take to convention, do you think, or just, yeah?
I don't know. I honestly don't know how that would work. I know we work in the Chicago local, which is the 4 states, for the Illinois tax incentive. Our brothers and sisters in Indiana want a tax incentive. So then we have to also, the same staff, work to benefit Indiana's tax incentive. Right to work state, Republican governor, no film office. Now they have a film office. Now who knows what's going to happen to their film office. It's a big resource issue to try to get everybody an even playing field, and everybody has to want it. So we're doing it locally. If we could do it locally on each local and then move it forward, but some locals can't even get tax incentives or tax credits or tax rebates.
Yeah, and my local, sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
I was just going to say, we've got a tax incentive in Washington State, and we've got a program in Montana, but Idaho has not been able to get theirs enabled, and Alaska had a great one, but it got cut by their governor or their legislature in favor of oil.
Well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're just performers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm an actor, but I'm having to do all this advocacy in order to benefit me and my fellows,
I've gotten a couple of texts here letting me know that the bill that's going through Congress is called the Mixed Earner Pandemic Unemployment Assistance Act.
Yes.
And you don't need to remember all that, but take this down, everyone. HR 7691. Contact your congressperson and tell them that you want that passed. That's what's going to allow us to get the full unemployment that we all deserve. Okay.
Do it today. Do it today.
Yeah. And leave this call and do it.
And to your point, that was an email that was sent to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it was sent 2 days ago, and you do it, and everyone's like done, and then we don't pass it on to the next member. So that's the different level of democracy or governance that we have to be better at as members. Is not just I clicked and filled it out, but I'm going to get 10 other of my friends to fill it out too.
Yeah. And P.S. 7691 was something that was, if I understand correctly, spearheaded by Adam Schiff and SAG-AFTRA. So well done to our leaders for that. P.S. Kevin Murray, I just saw you for the first time. I don't know if I missed you earlier, but we got to your question at the very beginning. So watch the replay of this. I hope you were here before and had to leave for a second. Okay, I want to get to. Hold on a second. Now I'm getting a bunch of questions.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so this is a little bit. This might be a little. I don't know. Say it again.
A little country.
Maybe a little controversial. And you touched on this a little bit, Ilyssa. How do you feel about people from LA and New York finding out about jobs in Chicago and Seattle, calling ourselves local hires and putting ourselves up for those jobs and potentially taking those jobs? Thoughts? Boo, says Rick.
Yes, I hate that.
Tell me why.
Well, because they're undermining the contract. I mean, I'm fine with actors from other locals if they're traveled in and if they're lodged as per our contract terms. I'm fine with that. But and that makes sense when you're dealing with independent film. You're always going to have 2 or 3 named people, and then the rest of the cast is filled in by locals. So I love the supporting players and so forth. And that's basically in order to sell a film or sell a TV show. But just doing the I'm gonna sleep on your couch and work on this show and not get my additional compensation per the contract. I don't appreciate that.
So I want to make sure I understand. The contract says that if I, Amir in LA, book a job in New Orleans, they have to pay me for the job and they also have to fly me out. That's part of the contract, right?
And they have to lodge you too.
And they have to lodge me, right?
And you get per diem.
And you get a travel pay.
Right. So, but if I tell them, oh, no, don't worry about all that other stuff, just pay me the session fee, I'll handle everything else. What I'm doing is, I'm making money on that thing, but I'm actually undercutting the terms that we as a union have negotiated, which is
Yep.
the flights, the lodging, the per diem, all of that. Is that right?
Yep. That's
so
right.
so if I understand you, it's not a matter of you being sort of like jealous of me taking your job, right? Because you don't own that job to begin with, right? It's more so an issue of sort of undercutting union organizing. Is that accurate?
Yes. Exactly.
That's really interesting. I actually never even thought about it that way, but that makes so much sense.
Hire, Amir. You could just stop, right? You could stop working local hire now. But
well,
like,
I never, to be fair, I never have.
Okay, good. But like to the point that Rick is saying, there again, complexities and nuance to the history of our unions, because prior to technology and prior to all the different tax incentives out there, producers' home base, like the production hub, the center, was Hollywood, right? And there was a component in New York as well. And you would theoretically go out and find fame and fortune in your dreams in those other places. When we see ourselves today as a national union, and you see all these other production centers popping up, and some have, like Michigan had a great big tax incentive that was really threatening the Chicago local. Back then it was the branch, the SAG Chicago branch, in who was going to get that job based just on the dollar amounts. But I could just drive across the border and work there. Am I local hire? Because I could just drive over there. It's within the zone. You know what I'm saying? It really crosses all these lines. And what it really comes down to Rick's point is, yeah, I hate it. Ethically, don't work in another market as local hire and undercut the contract. But if you want to work in this market and compete for the same job, that's something I welcome, because I have had auditions where it was actually kind of funny. I had this audition and my friend goes, "Oh, my friend got that job." And I was like, "Oh, where's your friend?" "New York." And I was like, "God damn it." Well, you know what? Good for her. I'm sure. And then, of course, I looked her up. The caliber of actress who got that job, she probably got overscale and residuals. She got probably upgraded to first class. She got, because her representation and her credibility leading up to it really did. She got everything the contract demanded and more, because we negotiate the minimum. So if you can negotiate higher, yay for you. But the idea of casting directors and or agents or the actor saying, "Yeah, I'm just going to drive to Pittsburgh and get on that film," that without it, it undercuts that. Not that there's just get the contract to do it. Audition fair and square, get all that the contract offers you, that members have negotiated really hard on our behalf. Don't undercut it. Local hire is a terminology that does not exist in our contract. And people think it does. Oh yeah, I'll work local hire, because we used to go, there was a term to it in producers home base in Los Angeles. And it's just not like that anymore. It's not because we didn't like that or we liked that. It's just different today. The structure is different.
Yeah.
Don't come to Chicago and work local hire, because I'll find no.
She will.
Great. Okay. So got a question from Charlie Bowden about W&Ws. So just to
wages and working conditions.
Yes, wages and working conditions meetings. These are, if anyone is on this call who doesn't know what a W&W is, before we renegotiate any contract, we have what's called W&Ws, where members come together and present, just get up to the mic and say what we would like to see differently in the new contract, right? You might say, I don't like how the current contract doesn't have enough streaming residuals. I want more streaming residuals, or, whatever. And then what happens is all of the ideas that come up in that W&W get sort of pushed up the ladder to what's called plenary, and then go to the negotiating committee, and then we negotiate from there. So the question from Charlie is, what's the process for W&Ws in Chicago and Seattle? I know what they're like in Los Angeles. And what's the turnout like there?
Well,
Go ahead, Ilyssa.
what are they like in Los Angeles,
Well,
Amir?
I'll tell you what they're like in Los Angeles. It really depends. The turnout varies. Sometimes it's great. Sometimes it's frankly terrible and very disappointing. And you know, it's interesting. You tend to hear the same sort of things and the same sort of changes that we want, right? Normally it's just more residuals, right? But what's interesting is that, you know, at the end of every W&W session, they have us vote on, okay, here's all the things that came up today. What are your top 3? What are your top 5? I'm not sure what the number is exactly. I haven't been into a WW in a like a year or so, but
that's when we had the last W&Ws.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. It makes me wonder how niche concerns are going to be addressed. Like, for example, we just had our last "You Are the Union" a couple weeks ago was about performers with disabilities, right? And so if a performer with a disability gets up at a W&W and they say, this is an issue that affects me, that is very difficult on me, and I would like to see this in the next contract. And then they say to the room, okay, who has that on their top 3? I think it's very possible that will not make it onto very many top 3 lists, right? Because people are perhaps more focused on themselves and they don't see themselves as a person with a disability, or they're focused on larger sort of macro issues like residuals or you know, pension and health, right? So I always wonder how that concern is going to sort of make it up the ladder. That's been my experience. I'm not sure if that's how it works for y'all, Ilyssa and Rick. Is it similar?
I'll start.
Please.
So exactly the same thing. Well, just so those playing at home understand, of the 25 locals, 10 locals do not have offices. So that means they don't get to come to, say, a Cagney room and get their minute at the mic, their 2 minutes at the mic. They have to find another way to do that. And I'm sure, Rick, you can talk more about that. In Chicago, you have an office. And so our staff reaches out. We have an announcement to the membership at Wide. Only members in good standing and who are not producers, meaning they're not signatories to the contract, for example, in commercials, can come to this meeting. You sign a confidentiality, and then we set our meeting structure, however that meeting structure is. LA, for example, maybe New York as well, I understand that you have constant meetings because you have so many members, right? We're able to have one caucus. We're able to have one background caucus in commercials and we don't have to have multiple days because we usually just talk about it that one meeting. So we have the separate caucuses. We have a voiceover caucus. We'll have a stunt caucus, a background caucus, but those things do not happen unless member leaders demand that it happens. So because nationally they say it's W&Ws, everybody, for example, just have a W&W for animation. Not everybody does that. So not every local demanded having one. And so maybe a smaller group of people worked with staff to get one going because maybe there's not a member leader who works that category of work. So it's really important that member leaders are identified within their local, and the person who has that issue, if it's a PWD issue, and I'll give you a perfect example. In Chicago, we had a principal performer, and I'm going to get this kind of mixed up, a principal performer cast for a commercial, but you weren't seeing their face. They were signing. And they wanted them to not get the principal pay and residuals. And we said, what? You auditioned it, you cast it, they are performing in the way they perform. And we got that, and that became part of our W&W. We all around the table agreed that that was we make a proposal. We don't do like, hey, pick your top 3. We do motions and proposals. Everything, if it's a proposal that everybody votes up, which usually there's consensus because Chicago is like super chill, we move it forward. And then that goes into the matrix, that big package that gets unpacked at the W&W plenary with that seated commercial negotiations contract committee. The cool thing about that voiceover thing is it did really touch heartstrings, but it also made sense because it was so discriminatory. And we got that into that commercials contract that time. That distinguished that that person would be an off-camera principal performer who earns residuals and not a hand model.
Yeah.
With the back of the book, one time only payment. So it's like that situation was an example where being in a smaller market has its advantage because you're a bigger fish as a leader in a smaller pond, and you can take all the issues. And then what we end up doing, regardless of the contract, if we're in the W&W in our local, is we get the meeting minutes from other locals, which has been very complicated these last couple of times. I think we have lost our way there a little bit, and we have to get back on track. And we share, and I go, oh my gosh, you know, Portland has this amazing ask. You know, I want to support that, and I'll bring it to the W&W in Chicago, and I say, listen, I read Portland's minutes confidentially in my union office, not in my home. We don't share information. And I will say, I really like this, and I want to support it. So let's support that. And then we go around and we support the minutes, not just the minutes, we support the proposals from other locals that resonate with us. And one other thing that was really important that happened, that staff really heard 2 commercial negotiations ago, and because I've only sat in the commercial negotiations, that's kind of my jam, is we said, you need to pay attention to the fact of the way the work is going with commercials. We need to understand the regional needs. We need to understand. And so we've developed an organizing mechanism based on those needs that came out of those initial W&Ws of what we were seeing and what we needed. And it worked. And it's just a matter of now going out and organizing that work. Members have to do that as well. We are the team. We are the foot soldiers. We have to go do that. We can't just be like, yeah, we wrote it. We agreed to it. Now staff go do it. We all have to carry that water.
Yep.
Rick, before I ask you how W&Ws work in Seattle, I want to ask Ilyssa to clarify one thing that you talked about. You said that when W&Ws are happening, it's incumbent upon local member leaders to demand a W&W where they are. Did I hear you right?
No, it demand that they take the time, because there's no like national staff can say, or national can say, it's W&W time. And LA will say, great, we're meeting Monday through Friday, 3 hours a day, blah, blah, blah. If I don't, as a member leader, they say, okay, you guys are going to do W&Ws. They come to the leadership and they say, it's W&W time. What do you want to do? If there's a member leader who's not engaged, they might say, meh, let's just have one. Or if the market isn't that busy and it's not their genre of work, yeah, we don't really have a lot of TV theatrical here. Maybe we just have 1 or 2. In my market, we demand caucuses. Not every local has enough members or that category of work to have a caucus. I think I saw Brian Peters from Chicago pop on. He's a stunt performer. We started a stunt committee for the first time, which is amazing and awesome. And he came to a bunch of the W&Ws, and then we're like, have a stunt caucus, because now we have people who are engaged who can talk about the issues better than just the general membership. And that's the exciting thing, is when you see it as a member leader and you make that happen.
Awesome. So Rick, thank you, Ilyssa. Rick, so how do WWs work in Seattle?
Very similarly to both LA and Chicago, really. On a much smaller scale, though. We're considered a small local. We do have an office, but our office also administers to Portland local. So technically, we've got 5 states that we are overseeing. And my W&W meetings, depending on the year, it varies, the attendance and what the needs of the members are. Sometimes we've almost had half a room full. Sometimes we have a handful of people. It depends on the year and how happy or not happy people are with the content as the contract as it is.
Yeah. Yeah, I wish I knew the secret sauce for making W&Ws super well attended all the time.
I mean, it sounds like a boring thing initially.
Maybe that's the thing. W&W sounds boring as hell.
I mean,
I think people don't come. I think people, well, one, you have to really be somebody who advocates for it. I'm kind of obnoxious about it.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it. And I say to people, are you coming? Are you coming? And like sometimes you have a little food, right? Actors like free food, they tell me. So it's kind of like, oh, well, you come during lunch or dinner time, maybe. Okay. But really, we don't know our contracts. The contract that you work, not everybody's contract. Like, I don't know the recording artist contract, nor do I negotiate that contract. I don't work that contract. But my contract, the lay member doesn't even know what their day rate is, doesn't even know what their terms are, doesn't even know what their reuse is going to be, doesn't even know why their residuals goes through the union before it comes to them, and why it's going to their agent, and their agent shouldn't be taking 10%. That is the battle. So if you got everybody to understand the contracts that they work, they might say, you know what? That term negotiated in 1964 really doesn't ring true to me anymore. I think we need to really upgrade that. We really need to talk about that. And then you go, or I'm on set and I keep having an issue where they cut my lunch and they keep saying this crazy thing about French hours. What's that? Oh, well, we have that in the contract. Let's talk about that. French hours doesn't exist, so let's talk about meal penalties. Oh my gosh, meal penalties haven't gone up in X amount of years. What? I showed up to a W&W and there's a meal penalty? I had no idea. It's education. People aren't in their union contract terms.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if this is speaking out of school, but I feel like that's our fault.
Oh my God.
Right? Like I feel like, you know, we all need to do a better job of educating. I mean, shit, that's what this is about, right? Is trying to get people more information, you know what I mean? So that they understand how this works, right?
I mean, it's hard if you're trying to do lessons and classes and get new headshots and learn how to self-tape. This is a hard job. It's not easy.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that just watching who's attending this, it's just member leaders. I don't see maybe one or two strict members, but it's the member leaders. And this takes me back to when I first began my union career. As soon as I became a legacy SAG member, I talked to my executive and asked, what can I do to volunteer? What committees do you have? I was very into finding out everything about every contract and also every committee. And then that got me onto my local board. So it takes a level of engagement from members to get to being board members and committee members. And it's years. It's like putting years into you can't just get it overnight. And I remember my first committee was an elections committee. And,
that's where they get you.
Yeah.
I want to say, Rick, although I do see a lot of familiar names on this list, people who I know are already in union service, I'm actually really happy about that. And my hope is that the questions that are coming up here, because this isn't just the 19 of us talking here, right? This is going to be saved for people to be able to watch in the future. So hopefully what we're talking about here will continue to be of use to people beyond just the 19 people on this Zoom. My hope is that we're sort of building a storehouse of information that helps people get more engaged and more involved. I mean, your point is taken that a lot of these Zooms are sort of just people who already know this shit talking. And P.S., Ilyssa, first 2 curse words on the Zoom are from me, and I'm very disappointed in you. But
swear jar.
I have a question from Eric
SAG-AFTRA
Wydra.
Foundation.
I have a question from Eric Wydra, who says the Ads Go Union campaign has gotten a lot of traction in the last few years. Huge proponent of Ads Go Union here in LA. What are some suggestions for getting members of the smalls and mids even more engaged to flip commercials to SAG-AFTRA jobs, knowing there is a very tight timeline for doing so between initial non-union casting notice to shoot date?
Just getting them to, as soon as I see that notice, to send that email to adsgounion@sagaftra.org and CC whoever your local exec or contracts administrator is. That's the first thing I do as soon as I see an email or a Facebook post that is a casting notice of that type. And that's for commercials. For commercials.
For anyone following along who's never heard of Ads Go Union, it is a fantastic initiative that the union has undertaken over the last few years, where if you see any non-union commercial casting happening or have any kind of information, even if it's just like, I happen to know that 1-800-Flowers is doing a non-union commercial. Maybe if you don't even know sort of where it's being shot, who's casting, just that little bit of information helps our commercials division sort of map out the non-union landscape, which helps us turn jobs union. Anytime you find any kind of information about that, as Rick said, email it to
regardless of the rate.
Yes, whether it's terrible or fantastic, which likely not fantastic, but email it to adsgounion@sagaftra.org. We can often turn those jobs in a matter of hours sometimes. And even if we don't, the information gleaned from those is extremely, extremely useful. Ilyssa, please.
So what maybe people don't know that are on this is that we also have a more like local component called Ads Go Local to be partners with Ads Go Union on the national level, because we have regional codes, and those regional codes are an organizing mechanism for non-signatories, producers and advertisers and ad agencies that are not signed, that are really, really local based. And each local has their own. So if you go to sagaftra.org/adsgolocal and Ads Go Union, you'll read more about both initiatives. I will say one of the things that, man, I've been trying to do, I mean, honestly, Amir, we started Ads Go Union back in as the CORI, the Corporate Organizing Restructuring Initiative, or Recapturing Initiative. That's what we called it. We always have an acronym for something.
Terrible.
Oh yeah.
That was in, I want to say
2014.
April 2015. And we have been creating a different organizing component for that. And what I was really hoping, at least in my local, is that we could get agents to buy into it and support it. And so we have a handful of franchised agents who thought it was a great idea. So when they cast, because, you know, we're bragging on social media, and an agent will put up, congrats to Amir on this, you know, Chevy spot. And it says nothing else. And you're like, is that union or non-union? Is Amir working off the card? Should I be concerned? Like all of a sudden people spiral. But if that agent goes #AdsGoUnion, we all know that's a union spot. And so we've been trying to do that in our local pre-COVID more and more, not to get them to necessarily promote SAG-AFTRA, but to promote the difference of this is a union spot, this is a non-union spot. So that's one way to get people to learn about it and to promote it. The other thing is, if you have, hopefully, like a Casting Networks you don't need to pay for it, but if you have a Casting Networks account, Casting Frontier, even Actors Access a little bit, and you find commercial breakdowns that get sent, that you could go on. I have saw lists of commercial, and I will send the entire breakdown list, the entire 3 pages of non-union in my market when you do all the drop downs, and send it to Ads Go Union for data collection. This is what's happening. Are they all doing like social media? Is any of this network? What is it? And then they get a snapshot of what's going on. And that's another thing you can do.
Yeah, you know what I say is it's a lot like Facebook and Amazon about how they build a profile of you by your browsing activity, right? That's sort of what SAG-AFTRA is doing when we get little pieces of information about the non-union landscape, right? That helps us sort of map the landscape. So, so to your question, who asked that question? Eric. So to your question, Eric, Ads Go Union is not always about turning specific jobs, right? Ads Go Union is also about changing the landscape, right? And the more that our union can understand the landscape, the better we are at changing it. Yeah?
It's also about enforcement, which is something we don't talk about. And we don't talk enough about enforcement, which is something like a local hire issue. Would you enforce it? Like, dude, you're working local hire. That's not right. It's not calling out people, but it's calling out what's right. So oftentimes you might say, I got wind of this, you know, bad example, McDonald's commercial, and it's non-union. And you're like, whoa, 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 what? They're with Wyden and Kennedy. Oh, no. How do I, and then you can take all that information and send it to Ads Go Union at SAG-AFTRA.org and your exec, or if you have a staff person who does commercials, and they can go in and enforce the contract, and some people get brought up on Rule 1 charges even for working non-union on those. So it's definitely a multi-prong organizing tool that has seen great benefits, but it's also been hard fought over these years.
And knowing is half the battle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's true. I heard that on a cartoon one time.
Yeah.
Quick shout out from Harold Phillips wants to thank
Hey, Harold.
Portland wants to thank you for your support. And let's see. Stephen Peluso says, member engagement should be at the top of anyone's list of things to improve the high voter turnout. Yeah, absolutely. Both to turn out higher election results, W&Ws. That, I mean, that's why I'm doing this. Like, I just think
thank you for
more
this,
people.
Amir.
Oh well, yeah. I'm so happy that we're all here together. But yeah, the more engaged our members are, the more powerful our union is, right? I mean, there's sort of no two ways about it. Someone asked on the Zoom, do people who are on the board or officers, can they still be actors? Or is that just for staff? Yeah, so staff members, this is not exactly a mids and locals question, but I'll just go ahead and answer this. If you are a member and you become a staff member, you have to surrender your card and you can't work our contracts. That is not the case for board members or committee members. In fact, quite the opposite. We want our board members and committee members to be engaged members, right? We want our board members to be working performers who understand the contracts that we're working.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, there's a lot of people who don't always know the difference between staff and member leaders, and that's what we are. We're member leaders who were, elected.
And no board members are paid a dime. We do this. We volunteer from the lowest committee member to the national president. They're all volunteers.
Yeah. I mean, it blows my mind. Like, I don't spend a quarter of the time that some of the other volunteer member leaders do. And it blows my mind. Like, for example, our negotiating committee was on Zooms for like almost 2 months, like 30, 40 hours a week, not getting paid.
Yeah.
That blows my mind. That's one reason I'm never doing a negotiating committee.
Oh, no, you built
Sorry, Ilyssa.
relationships. And you learn so much.
You enjoy it that much, Ilyssa?
No, I don't. But I have to say that I learn so much about not only the contract and building the relationships nationally. I can just name a bunch of people that I just adore, but I'm not gonna just because I'll forget somebody like an award speech. I forgot. So, but I think that when you learn and you feel that you're being effective as a leader within a negotiation and you are talking with staff, and that's what's important. And I think you hammer this home, Amir, is we are the union. The staff works for the union, us, and our dues pay for us to have staff. Staff does not go to auditions. Staff doesn't get the breakdowns unless we give them to them. Staff only gets sometimes the production reports if the production sends them completely spelled out correctly. We, the members, actually should not like overwhelm the staff with information, but if you get booked on something, maybe tell your local staff. I know I say to my staff, hey, did you know they're casting this? No, I didn't. They can do a set visit then. They can go to make sure that the casting director is actually only running at under an hour, within that hour. There's so much, and this is not the members' fault. It's just the idea that we feel that, oh, the union is over there. We have no power.
The union is us.
Power. And so when I tell my staff, hey, did you know that so-and-so had these 3 union auditions going on? They're like, no, thanks for letting me know. I'll check in and make sure those member reports are filled out correctly, or the exhibitee sign-in sheets and everything are filled out. I'll make sure I'll give them a call, remind them to put them out, stuff like that. Because our staff is really busy organizing and enforcing and administering and doling out residuals and doing negotiations. They're not going, hey, let's go to some auditions. That's my job. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Preach. Okay, sorry.
Great. Okay. Another question from Charlie, who's actually, I worked with Charlie in Los Angeles. I don't know where Charlie is right now, though. But what are the most active committees in your 2 locals, and how often are they meeting?
Well, right now, my local committees, the most active committee would be the organizing committee when we are meeting, and then the local board, and that's just because of the COVID-19 protocols right now.
Yeah.
Pre-COVID, I would say organizing committee, what else? And our wages and working conditions committees. We've got several committees that are basically follow the pattern of the national committees, but they're just all smaller and meet much less frequent than what the national committees do.
Yeah.
And it's similar in that people throw out the number 41, but I think there's 41 plus national committees. There are not 41 plus local committees. Each local does not. But if there is a national background committee, you might have a local background committee. If you have a national organizing type committee, you're going to have maybe a local committee. The local board establishes and then does at least in my local, the idea of seating. We let anybody who wants, we don't limit, you can always participate in our local committees. Our president does appoint and approve. We try to do that so people who want to be chairs are actually chosen to be chairs. It's not like putting your friends in. And we just make sure that like the people are working that work, that they are leading that committee, because it would be foolish for me I keep saying stunts for whatever reason, but I would be foolish if I were the chair of that committee, right? So you try to get the people who work the work. So in our local, we have committees that, again, everything should be about organizing, I think, a union. And so, yes, our organizing committee is much more active than any other committee because things flow through it. We also have an agents committee, PRC, that has been very busy working with our franchised agents and getting more kind of better communications with them. I'm trying to think before what we were doing. I know, oh, you asked about time. So there was a period of moderation early on after merger. And that period of moderation, which some people would call it austerity, but it's all about branding. Period of moderation is where we were limited to 4 meetings. So a meeting a quarter, if you were not in an organizing initiative. So the Commercial Performers Committee, which the 3 of us are on the national level, we meet more because we're constantly working towards this Ads Go Union initiative. Local boards might not have anything on their agenda, so they might meet only quarterly. Or somebody's EEO committee might not have an initiative, and therefore they might not meet at all.
What's EEO?
EEO is the Equal Opportunity of Employment Act or committee,
Equal Employment Opportunities.
See, equal employment opportunity. Thank you. But it's like those committees don't meet. So for example, you did a talk, and the PTOE did a talk on performers with disability. The PWD committee, I know in AFTRA was huge because of Anita Hollander, and it then still stayed very positive here in SAG-AFTRA. It's still, we don't have a local PWD committee. If we needed one and somebody said, you know what, we really have these issues, oh, this is an issue, they would come to the local board and we would establish one. And then you would seat it and meet, especially if you had an organizing initiative.
And if I wanted to be on a committee in Chicago, how would I go about doing that?
So when you go to that website,
what website?
The SAG-AFTRA.org, and you go to drop-down locals and you click on Chicago, there's a list of how to get in touch, and you could ask what is the list of committees should be there, and if they're not, it's because we're updating it. And you can join any committee at any time. And then we have, thankfully, I think every local now can do this, has done it. We have a local e-newsletter. And so local members are on it. It's not for national consumption, obviously. Our local members are on that committee and are on that email if they want to be. It's called the Activator. We named it something. It came actually out of the strike of 2000 to give people messages, email messaging on where to meet for strike actions. It was really, really powerful. And we're really big on history and legacy in Chicago. And so we've carried it through, and we still have it to this day. And listed on there would be like, this committee's meeting and this is happening and so forth. And you just come.
Great. Rick, I had you muted because you had some background noise that was cutting Ilyssa off. But let me ask you, Rick, if I wanted to get, no worries, if I wanted to get on a committee in Seattle, how would I do that?
Same way, just go to the local drop down on the SAG-AFTRA.org page, and we've got our committees listed, and if not, again, they're being updated. But there is contact information for who to send an email to say, hey, I'm interested in this. And if you don't see what you're looking for, ask. It doesn't hurt to ask, and if it's brought forward to a local board meeting, then we can maybe make a new committee or not. But everything depends on what the members are calling for and what the members need in a particular local. So
I think that's a pretty perfect place to wind it down. And we're actually out of questions at the moment, so that's perfect. There's a lot of smarty pants on here who just came to be like, what kind of bullshit is Amir going to say anyway? So people don't have as many questions today. More so just judgy McJudgersons in this room.
Really?
No, I don't know. Anyway, I want to thank Ilyssa and Rick for being here. Thank you so much for volunteering your time today as you so often do for the union. I want to thank Jen Levin for her amazing help behind the scenes. But before we wrap up, I just want to ask a couple favors of anyone watching, either watching live or if you're watching the replay. We'd love some feedback on this. We just started doing this like a month or so ago. I've wanted to do it forever. But we want to make it as useful as possible for members. So let us know what you thought, right? What should our next one be focused on? If anything, maybe it shouldn't be focused on anything. Maybe it should just be like a sort of grab bag or whatever. And then yes, Alyssa?
I feel like this was a grab bag, but
this was a little bit of a locals grab bag.
Yeah.
Right. But we've had more focused conversations in the past. Do people like the grab bag format? Who knows? Let me know.
I appreciate that you reached out to other locals beyond LA and New York. We're a national union with national work and actors and broadcasters and maybe doing something with broadcast journalists is a possibility for the future.
Ooh, that's something I'm utterly ignorant about. That would be good, but I feel so intimidated. Maybe I would have like.
You should do it.
Because I feel like journalists are all smarter than me.
They are.
This is turning into a whole thing about me, and I don't know if that's appropriate. The second favor I want to ask of anyone watching is go on your social media right now and let people know that you just watched this, right? You just watched this unofficial live stream, and let people know what you thought. Hopefully you found it productive. Hopefully you found us receptive and engaging. But you know what? If you didn't, share that too. What I really want is for people to know that right now, while our union's official activities are mostly restricted to like essential business, which is like contracts, safety, negotiations. Even though that's going on, there's still member leaders like the three of us, like others who are doing similar things, who are doing what we can do to connect and represent our fellow members, right? And it's like we've been saying for the whole hour here, you are the union, right? So if you want to get more involved, hit me up on Instagram, hit up Rick and Alyssa on social. I'm not going to go through the whole ats because you're smart. You can find them. But we'll see what we can do to get you plugged in. All right. Thank you again to everybody. Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Jen. And that's it. Bye, everybody. All right.
Bye.